Good morning, everyone, and thanks for being here with us this morning. We're going to start off this morning's news conference with a statement from Minister Shannon Phillips, Environment and Parks, and then we're going to hear from Dr. Andrew Leach, Advisory Panel Chair, and after that we'll have time for some questions and answers from the floor and on the phone. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and good morning. Thank you for joining us. At the beginning of the summer, our government took the first step towards showing real leadership on the issue of climate change. We phased in a higher price on carbon, and we increased stringency on greenhouse gas emissions. To provide certainty and to ensure Alberta remains competitive, we made these changes prudently, phasing them in by 2017. While this is already much more than the previous PC government had done, we recognize that it is not enough. Climate change is one of the most pressing issues facing our province and our world. It is a challenge we all face, affecting everything from our health to food production and fresh water to biodiversity in the economy. Albertans must do their part to address climate change. It is simply the right thing to do for our families, for our air, land, and water, and for our economy. We know we cannot afford to sit on the sidelines and wait for other jurisdictions to impose their approaches on us. That is why we are choosing to be leaders, creating a plan that is based on Albertans' expectations. Today, I'm pleased to announce that all Albertans will have an opportunity to contribute to their province's new plan to take leadership on climate change. Under the leadership of Dr. Andrew Leach, Alberta's Climate Change Panel will spend the next number of weeks engaging Albertans in climate change conversation. Public sessions will be held in Edmonton and Calgary, and an online survey will allow more Albertans to share their thoughts and ideas on how our province can build a healthier, greener, and more sustainable economy. Today, I'm also pleased to announce that Dr. Leach will be aided in this work by 4 very capable and knowledgeable panel members. The members of Alberta's Climate Change Panel are Gord Lambert, who could not be with us today, is the president of GRL Collaboration for Sustainability and formerly of Suncor Energy. Linda Cody, Chief Sustainability Officer of Enbridge Inc. Stephanie Cairns, Principal of Rangelia Consulting, Director of Carbon Pricing with Sustainable Prosperity, and who currently sits on the boards of International Institute for Sustainable Development and the Pembina Institute. And Angela Adams, a proud Métis woman, frontline worker in the oil sands, and long-serving member of the Fort McMurray Public School Board, who will bring a community and Indigenous perspective to our process. These individuals were chosen for their experience, their skills, and their ability to network and bring new perspectives and voices to the table. In addition to inviting all interested Albertans to share their ideas, the panel will also invite stakeholder groups to meet and share their insights. This includes speaking with industries, municipalities, scientists, and experts. They will also be meeting with First Nation and Métis communities. Indigenous peoples have considerable ecological knowledge, and traditional ways of life are increasingly under pressure by a changing climate. Following all of these conversations, the panel will provide its best advice to government. Their process will be thorough and thoughtful. It will also be expedient. Albertans have waited far too long for their government to do the right thing and show leadership on climate change. It is my goal to have a new proposal prepared in advance of the United Nations Conference of the Parties in Paris this December. To get this right, we need to hear from Albertans. I encourage Albertans to take the time to contribute on the website or to attend a community session. All Albertans will have a role to play as we bring our province into a lower carbon future. I'm going to turn things now over to Dr. Andrew Leach to provide more details on the engagement process and that the panel is undertaking. Thank you.
Thanks, Minister Phillips. It's great to be joined by my fellow panel members, absent Mr. Lambert, who's still on vacation, so we'll let him have that for a couple more days. I guess first on behalf of my panel colleagues, we're really excited to get to work on this difficult policy challenge. The steps in the engagement process, Mr. Phillips already discussed them. We're going to be engaging with Albertans both online, and you will have now a copy of our discussion paper, which lays out the challenges that we face. Those are on my notes, hold up as prop. So the discussion guide really does a good job of framing the challenge, but also of talking about our vision for the future and of laying out the landscape for our panel discussion in terms of some of the options that are available, some of the policy tools which are at our disposal, and some of the areas where we really need to focus. It provides the context for our challenge, but also for the opportunities. And specifically, it lays out the challenges across all sectors of the economy. And this is an important thing to emphasize. This is not just an oil sands or an oil and gas problem or an electricity problem. This occurs across all sectors. So to that end, we'll be engaging with representatives from the oil and gas sector, from the electricity sector, but also experts in transportation and buildings and houses, from our other industrial emitters, including the value-added sectors, resource processing sectors, from agriculture, from forestry, from waste, as well as with representatives from our big cities to understand the challenges that they face. So the guide is really the starting point for the conversation, in addition to the website where we've put together a survey, which we hope will give us a sense of how engaged Albertans feel about this problem. So please take the time to give us your comments. You'll notice on the survey that for each section, there is also an opportunity for additional comments. Please take the time to fill those out so I can tell my students on course evaluations. And and also, there is an opportunity for a document drop. So this provides an opportunity for all engaged Albertans to put information in front of the panel that we wouldn't otherwise see. The core of our discussion will also involve the engagement with technical stakeholders from each of the major sectors, where the panel will have an opportunity to bring its expertise into the room, but more importantly, to listen and to learn from experts, from academics, and from industry as to the challenges, but again, reemphasize this, the opportunities and new technologies will allow us to address this problem. Once we're wrapped up, our timelines are obviously short, we will provide a report to the government which outlines the evidence, our knowledge, and the best advice we can provide to the government to take action on this challenge. So thank you very much, and just look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much. Before we go to the question and answer portion, I just wanted to note that the Minister and Dr. Leach are available for Q's and A's right now. If you're interested in talking with any of the three panel members, they are available for brief interviews following the news conference out in the hallways.
I have a question for the Minister.
Yeah.
Start. Are you giving any sort of targets? You want to reduce emissions by X amount, therefore find ways of doing it. If you're not doing that, then how can they aim towards a target?
Well, I think what's important here is that in the past, we've had commitments to targets that have not been credible. And action to reach those targets has not been realistic, and it hasn't matched up with the target at all. That was the previous government's record. So part of the job of the panel is going to be examining what a credible and realistic target actually is for Alberta.
So you're not actually giving any targets right now to the panel?
I'm going to leave that up to them to provide us advice on that matter.
But then, sorry, will they actually then be giving you a target you should be reaching?
What they're going to be doing is giving us a series of options.
All right, Graham, Josh, you had a question?
I mean, I was just following up on, I mean, whenever we see something like this, let's take a larger effect of the climate change accord that the US did with China or something. You have to have some sort of big target, because otherwise, what's gonna come of it, right? It's just a lot of just talk and not much action. So, I mean, how can you parade these people up here and not give us some sort of hard numbers?
Well, certainly there are a number of targets out there that are circulating among the federal government, among the international community. What we need to do is recognize how we can do better and how we can ensure that we are reducing our greenhouse gas emissions within the context of Alberta. And so there are a number of different targets. There have been a number of different targets in the past. And my approach is going to be to receive the best options and advice that I can from the panel that is evidence-based and is backed by science.
Okay. And also, this panel, will they have anything to do with a future carbon levy framework, or the current one that you're trying to reach and then revamp?
We are seeking advice on how we price carbon in this process. That's exactly what this process is about. It's about four things: how we price carbon, how we transition to a more sustainable electricity sector, relatedly, how we grow the renewables economy in Alberta, and how we move forward on an efficiency framework for both individuals, small businesses, First Nations, municipalities. That is how we laid out this process from the very beginning, and those are the matters that the panel is going to examine.
Are you committed to go further than the previous targets we had?
what I am committed to is having the panel examine our options and give us the best advice that is backed by evidence and science.
Do you have a concrete deadline when you're going to require this report to be filed?
Well, the panel will be giving us advice by, I anticipate, the end of October, early November.
Just going back to the idea of targets, I'm sorry, I'm focused on these numbers because we saw the numbers from the previous government, 20 megatons by a certain date, then 200 megatons reduction by 2050. Are you saying that you want to go beyond that, or you might not even reach that based on what the panel hears?
Well, we do know that the previous government set targets and then promptly put almost no policy infrastructure in place in order to reach those targets. And so what we need to do is take a clear-eyed look at the Alberta economy and design our targets and our pricing framework and our other policy frameworks around that. We are going to take advice from the panel on how to best do that. But here's the situation. We are going to design our system that is unique to Alberta. We are a unique jurisdiction within the context of evidence-based decision-making, science, and what's best for our environment and our economy.
All right, I'm just going to see if there's any callers on the line here on the phone. Operator, do we have a call?
Your first question comes from the line of Jeff Lewis from Globe and Mail. Your line is now open.
Hi, just a question for Dr. Leach or the Minister. To what degree will federal commitments to reduce GHG emissions play into the deliberations here? I mean, presumably Alberta has to sort of do its part in the national effort, but is it going to be a key driver?
I think the approach is to design the best process for Alberta right now. And, we want to make sure that we are exercising leadership so that other jurisdictions are not dictating to us on how to take action on climate change. And we want to ensure that we're putting Albertans first and we're putting our economy and the sustainability of our energy industry first.
All right, I understand we have 2 more calls on the line. Operator, could I take another call?
Your next question comes from the line of Jeffrey Morgan from the Financial Post. Your line is now open.
Good morning. Thanks for taking my question. One quick clarification. Wanted to know how long the public sessions will be going on for, so a bit of a timeline on when this consultation will happen and what the next step is after that. And second, just wanted some clarification. Will the panel also be discussing I think the words were transition to a more sustainable electricity sector, so the phasing out and perhaps the accelerated phase out of coal-fired power plants here in Alberta?
First question on the topic of the timing of the public engagements. It will be through the month of September, and as will the Indigenous engagement and participation component of this process. As for the second question, we did commit in our platform to a phase out of coal. We intend to examine how to do that with the best interests of our economy and also consumers in mind. That will be a key component of the deliberations of the panel.
Thank you. I'll go to the next caller on the line. Operator?
Your next question comes from the line of Lauren Rugel from Canadian Press. Your line is now open.
Hi, it's Lauren Krugel, actually, from Canadian Press. I just had a question about the public review process. I'm just wondering whether comments from kind of the general public at these sessions will be given the same weighting as, feedback from, people with specific expertise in this area or, people that have a direct stake in the outcome of this review.
As you all know, we are a government of the people, and the people spoke very clearly on May 5th that they wanted to see new leadership on issues like the environment. So absolutely, we will be giving the same weight to the views of the public as we do to all other Albertans. Here's a very interesting piece of this climate change process. It's not just about oil sands and the energy sector. It's also about how we power our homes, how we get to work in the morning, and how we create a new and greener and more sustainable economy that creates those good long-term mortgage-paying jobs. And so all Albertans have a stake in that, and that's exactly why we want to hear from them.
All right, we'll go back to the floor in just a moment. I understand there's 1 more caller on the line. Operator, can I please take a call?
James Wood from the Calgary Herald. Your line is now open.
Hi, Minister. I guess this is a question for both yourself and Dr. Leach. How is this panel now going to work with the royalty review that was put out the idea was that the two processes would work together. How is that actually going to work in practice?
I think the short answer is very closely. I am in very close contact with Minister McQuaig-Boyd and her staff, and we have overlapping issues and responsibilities, of course. And so I think I'm going to leave the rest of the logistics of that to Dr. Leach, who has more detail.
Sure. Thanks, James, for the question. I think the most prominent way in which we'll work together is reconciling all of the knowledge we have on the state of the industry, the financial conditions of the industry, and the forward-looking views in terms of asset values and ability to sustain changes. The second area, of course, is the role of new technology, and we've seen how new technology has affected our energy industry in a variety of ways, from the rise of oil sands, gas markets, now the recent change in oil markets. So we need to understand how new and emerging technologies affects that industry. And then the third one is going to be the integration of the co-relationship between the oil sands sector and the electricity sector in terms of technologies like cogeneration. We have to make sure that we each have the best information available, so we'll use our processes jointly to accumulate that information. As well, I expect there'll be some overlap in our engagement with Indigenous communities as well. So on all of those files, we'll be joined at the hip.
Sorry, if I could just follow up on that, Minister. I mean, when you're looking at this and sort of broadly within the government, I mean, is there a feeling that the energy industry could take both a change to the royalty structure and higher costs around the carbon? I mean, how is the government trying to weigh those issues?
Well, one of the things that I did in June was I ensured certainty and competitiveness for industry by phasing in the changes to the ESCR. And so I think what that signals is making good on the commitment that Premier Notley made, which is no surprises for industry. And so that's why our panels are working together, and that's why we are cognizant of the multiplier effect that each of our policies have. And I don't know, perhaps you want to add to that? Or? All right.
All right, thanks,
I have a question,
for sure.
Dr. You mentioned technologies. Looking in terms of technologies to reduce emissions like carbon capture. Seems the current government is not a big fan of carbon capture and sequestration. Will that dictate to you then what you should be doing? The ideology of the government will dictate your outcome?
Well, I think there you really have to separate technology and policy. So the previous government had a policy around carbon capture and storage and a series of commitments around carbon capture and storage. But then there's the technology file. So as you've done a great deal of work, I think you spent a year on it, understanding the technology, and that exists whatever our policy is here in Alberta. So that's where we'll be looking, is to understand the technology, to understand its potential, and to understand its interaction with the other technologies that are available to us. And in terms of the data we use, understanding why that comes out of some of the modeled results, and understanding, well, are there assumptions that are driving towards different results, pushing one technology over another, and making sure that we go out to industry and to experts and to test all those assumptions and make sure that they're all internally consistent.
Sorry, just to follow up, just to go back to the question I had regarding, I'm stuck on targets, I understand that. But when you're looking at what you have to do, you're looking at what Canada's goals are for climate change reductions, and then trying to slot in Alberta's portion of that. Was that going to dictate how hard you go to find options and just how drastically we should be cutting?
I think Canada's goals absolutely play a role, but just as a follow-up on the targets question, colleague to your left asked, why aren't we here putting out a number? I think we got to keep in mind what's behind that number, right? We need to think about what the measures and what's within the scope of government policy. And so what our mandate is to look at what our policies should be, what our measures should be, and to reconcile that with what the outcomes, not to have a separate conversation where we're having a conversation over here about, well, this target sounds good. We're having another conversation over here about what policies and programs and technologies are possible. We need to link those two conversations, and whether it's nationally or provincially, that's going to be important.
So this,
Right.
I mean, this is also very complicated stuff you're going through. It's a very big plan that's being put together. Is this enough time? I mean, the end of October, that's
That's close. We're not very close.
I'll take this one
Yeah.
first and you can go ahead after. First of all, the previous government did a bit of work on this topic. They were moving forward with some ideas. And so some of this has been already examined within the Alberta context. Secondly, nationally and internationally, these issues have been examined now for quite some time. We have many examples from other jurisdictions how things have been done, not just on carbon pricing, but also efficiency and renewables. Alberta is the only jurisdiction essentially in North America without an efficiency strategy. We have many examples of how to do things and perhaps also how not to do things coming from the rest of the continent. And so, to me, there's a tremendous amount of opportunity there to move quickly on things that have become, in the rest of the world, simply common sense. And so I do believe it is enough time. We have a team of very, very capable panelists who know these issues inside and out. I have a tremendous amount of confidence in them. They all bring different perspectives, but they all share the same goal that Alberta must do better on climate change.
That's the person that has to
Dr.
write
Leach, do you have
that.
enough time?
Yeah, it's the person that has to write that report.
But, I think the timelines are obviously crunched, but this is an important file for Alberta. We'll get done as much as we can within the time frame. It's important to reemphasize what Minister Phillips said. Number one, we've brought together a panel of people who've been thinking about these issues and working in these issues for decades. And so they're part of our role is going to be to identify, first of all, what do we know? And then where are the uncertainties? And to reflect some of those uncertainties in the advice that we provide to government, to test those uncertainties through our technical engagement, and to come forward not with something that says, you can't open up a scientific paper and say, this is what Alberta's policy target, et cetera, package should be. You need to combine all of what we know, bring as much of it together in the short time frame that we have. That's what we'll do.
Can you describe what the public sessions will be like in Edmonton and Calgary? Are they going to be in a public hearing format? Are they going to go over several days or one day?
I think at this point we're expecting one day in each center, and that there'll be opportunities for closer discussions between people, panel members, members of the Secretariat. It will be aligned with our themes within the discussion paper, questions on the survey, those types of questions, give people an opportunity. I would like to avoid a public hearing format in terms of sitting and hearing just simply speeches over and over. I'd like to engage more closely with people wherever possible.
And will you be inviting people, or will it be like an invitation-only thing, or will you be open to the public general?
I expect it will be a combination of the two, that we will solicit groups to come, to send representatives to make sure that the groups that we know want to have a voice on this have an opportunity to be heard. But we will also have it be open to whoever wants to come in and speak to us.
I have a question for the minister. So the Premier wants to have something to take to Paris in November, December. What is it ideally that you'd want to give her before she steps on an airplane to head to overseas? What kind of document will you give her? Will it be a complete climate change strategy?
I think what we're going to have is an architecture on the four items that I discussed. How do we price carbon? How do we undertake a more robust efficiency strategy? How do we ensure that we are growing the economy through renewables? And how do we ensure the long-term sustainability of our electricity system? I think those are the four questions that drive the discussion paper and that will drive the conversation that we are having with Albertans over the coming weeks.
All right, I see a question back here. Could we take a question? Yeah, for sure.
This report comes back in October. The hard targets is something we're also fascinated with. Will you have new ones in advance of December? Or will you come out with these new, more sustainable emissions reductions targets? When can we expect?
I expect that we will have targets, and that whole conversation is intimately linked to price and how we drive investments in new technology and so on. And so I expect that the panel will be offering us a summary of what they heard on this topic and their best evidence-based options and advice on how to move forward.
We have time for one.
Governance plan, just to be clear, when you're going to release new targets for Alberta, you don't have a timeline set yet for when those will be revealed? It might not necessarily be for the summit in December?
I expect that the panel will have a tremendous amount to say on the topic of targets, and they will be offering us their best advice and options on how to move forward with that.
We have one last question, please, from Darcy.
When will the government actually bring in new policy? What are you looking at doing that? Is that going to be in December or in the spring?
I think that what you'll find is, these are massive files with a tremendous number of associated regulations, potential legislation, and so on. What we will have is an architecture for the 4 items that I spoke about, moving forward to Paris, so that we have we can have now a credible conversation with the international community, with the rest of the continent.
Minister, I want to give you a chance to respond then, because I think a lot of people hearing this will say, this sounds very similar to what the previous government did. A lot of sort of talk about engaging and hearing feedback from people, but putting off revealing a concrete plan. What's your response to that kind of criticism that may come out?
Well, I think that this government, our approach is materially different from the previous. First of all, the previous government made almost no effort to speak with Albertans on this topic. Second of all, one can claim leadership, and then, but that's materially different from actually doing leadership. And I think that's the contrast that you're going to see with the approach of the previous government. We intend to take real action, but we will not do so until we have the right evidence-based framework for doing so, and not until we have heard from Albertans in what is not a long process. Albertans are not going to be waiting forever and a day for our government's plan. This is a very short process, has been pointed out to us by you folks in your questioning and by others. The difference here is that our government intends to take real action, and we are serious about the economic impact of doing nothing on the environment.
All right, that was the last
saying that
question.
you're gonna go to
Actually,
Paris with
you're
no
able to
hard targets, though.
give, this is the last question that we
I know,
heard
but
from.
let's
I did not say that we're not going to. We're
just
going to
told
Paris.
us that.
I said that we are going to get our best advice from the panel on what our targets should look like, and they will be credible when we have them.
All right, that's enough, folks. If you're able to give me a call if you require any further information, that's no problem at all. I can help you out with that. And thank you very much, Minister and Dr. Leach.